Hey everyone, Nick Nader, Senior Solution Engineer here for Isos Technology. Isos Technology is an Atlassian Platinum Solution partner, so we essentially do everything from license management to cloud migrations to configurations, customizations, implementations, you name it. If you need help with an Atlassian product or something in the Atlassian ecosystem, definitely don't hesitate to go to our website at isostechnology.com. However, we're here today for a non-Atlassian product, probably the most popular non-Atlassian product in the ecosystem. We're going to be talking about Tempo, and there are three main products within the Tempo suite, the most popular products in their suite. We're going to be talking about Timesheets by Tempo, Planner by Tempo, and then Cost Tracker by Tempo. Let's jump right in. So the first thing I want to show is really how simple and easy it is for individual users to track and plan their time for the next couple of weeks from their Jira projects, so where they spend most of their time. And this can be done within Jira Work Management, Jira Service Management, and of course, Jira Software. And we're in a Jira Software Kanban project here for this demonstration. So we're going to show essentially how quick and easy we can dig into one of our epics. We've got some epics and some tasks on this board. Our demo example here is essentially a project tracking our vendor partnership program. So we're trying to enable partners, vendors of ours, to work with us in a more collaborative fashion. And that's what this project is focused on. So we have a vendor enablement program epic here, which is an encompassing issue that a lot of these tasks roll up into. So we're tracking some of our internal time against this larger epic here. And if we drill into this Jira issue view, you'll see that we have this panel dedicated to Tempo's work logs and plans for the future. And you essentially just have to click the Tempo button here right at the top, and this panel will open up. You can, of course, hide this panel as well if you don't want to see it every time. And you can even leverage Tempo down here in the bottom right in the details section if the main panel on that center section is too large for you. And this panel down here in the bottom right even has a tracker, so you can start and stop a tracker and add a description to it and know exactly how much time you've spent on that issue, and then go ahead and just hit the log time button to log the amount of time that that tracker has tracked so far. Now, what most people will do is they'll go in and just log time after they've done all of their work, right? Maybe at the end of the week, maybe when this issue is moving from in progress to completed, they'll track their time, or just at the end of the day, they'll say, hey, I spent 4 hours, 2 hours, 6 hours on this issue. So all they have to do is hit that log time button, come in here. It'll, of course, default to the current date, the current issue you're on, both of which you could switch. And then they'll say, hey, I spent 4 hours on this issue today. I can add a specific description to this time so I know what I spent it on. We can say I was in the planning meeting for our program and spent time constructing the future roadmap. We also have some hidden fields here. So you have the ability to log the remaining estimate. So against your original estimate, it'll automatically tick down as you log time, but you could update that original estimate by replacing the remaining estimate metric within here. You can log time for other users. So if I wanted to log this for some other individual on my team, like for Alana Grant here, I could do that as well. But we'll switch this back to me for now. And then you can also mark whether this is billable work or not. This is an internal issue, so we're going to keep it marked as unbillable, but we could log this against a specific account. So if your organization is a consultancy and you're doing client work, you have the ability to say, hey, this is billable to the client, and then grab a specific account, which is a Tempo configuration. You can have an account for every client that you work with, and that will log it within that client's account within Tempo. And you can use that in the reporting to say and roll up, hey, we've spent this much time against your account, so we're going to bill you for this much time. Here are the receipts. So very easy for us to select that account. We've got an internal operations account here. This one is also marked as OpEx cost. So when we get into the cost tracker period of the demo, this time that I've logged against this internal operational account will count towards the cost for operational expenses. We'll go ahead and log that time here. And it is just as simple to plan your time from the issue view as well. So if I want to, if I know I'm going to spend 4 hours a day on our vendor enablement program over the next week, I can drill into the plan time view. It'll pop up something very similar where I can plan time against a specific issue or an entire project within our Jira environment here. So I can select that issue that I'm on, of course. We lost it after switching to the project view, so we'll go in and find that issue again within the search history. We can add a description, and then we can make this a whole period of time so that we can select Monday through Friday of next week and say we're going to spend 4 hours a day on that. And this could repeat weekly, bi-weekly. That way, when you have these reoccurring meetings that you need to log time for, you can just have those planned out for the next quarter or as long as you would like, and you would never have to touch that plan until it's time to actually log that plan time, which we'll show here in a second. We can plan that time and you'll see that it'll all pop up for every single day on this issue that we have here within our Jira software project. Now the next view we're going to show is within the tempo section of the tool. You can navigate this. It's still within your Jira environment. It's just going to be within your app drop-down list here at the top. So as a manager or even as an individual contributor, you could at the end of your week jump to the tempo tool and track all of your time, log all of your time at once at the end of the week, right? So a lot of individual team members like to do it all at once. Hey, it's a Friday afternoon. I'm done all my work. I can track exactly what I did for the entire week. I remember what it is. I just have to look at it in this timeline view or within this list view. And from here, I have an issue search over here on the right-hand side. And it will automatically grab things like the recent issues that I've opened or worked on, the stuff that's assigned to me, my favorited issues. So very easy for us to navigate. I can even pin some Jira projects here at the top of the issue navigator so that I can very easily grab something like our vendor enablement program, the one I just logged time against earlier, and drag it into our timeline here and say, hey, I spent this amount of time on it today, and I can log time from here across the entire week, right? So very easy for us to log time and even plan time from this view if we have Tempo Planner as well. And up here at the top, you'll notice that we have a roll-up of our capacity for the day. So we have 8 available hours per day, and it shows how much time we've actually logged against our capacity, right? So within Tempo's configuration, you can set how many working hours your team or as an individual you usually work within a week. And then you'll have that availability at the top of your timesheet here within the Tempo tool. And as you can see here on our Friday, we have that vendor enablement program of 4 hours that we logged. These blue ones are actually our planned time for today on this Friday. And since we did the vendor enablement program in our morning today, we actually didn't do this update of documentation. So we're actually going to delete or edit this plan, maybe move it to next week, or just get rid of it because we didn't actually work on that today. Whereas this marketing campaign launch is something that we did work on today. So we're going to actually hit the checkbox and log that time. So it's really as simple as that. Once you have your planned time within the tool, you just hit that checkbox if you did execute that plan, or you delete it or move it if you didn't execute that planned time. And it's as simple as that to log it to the actual tool. You'll see we've got 7 of our 8 hours logged here. That 1 hour that we haven't logged was our lunchtime. So we're not going to put that within the tool. Although we could, if you need to track internal time like lunch, like internal meetings, you can of course track that within Tempo against a specific internal issue. And that could be excluded from something like all of your billable time. And your manager will be able to see, okay, your utilization is still 100%. You just spent 1 hour, at lunch today on this Friday. Now, what we're going to jump to next here is a view of essentially our time card, right, as an individual. So within Timesheets by Tempo, you can, of course, track all of your time as an individual, and then for the week, submit that time card for approval to your manager. So Tempo has a configuration of teams, roles, skills, responsibilities that you can aggregate into those teams. And then as a manager, you would be approving the timesheets of all the individuals within your team. So what I can do is I can submit my time card here. It'll show me how many hours I logged, how many were required. Looks like I put in 3.5 hours over what I was supposed to this week. And then I can select my manager here and even add a note to them and say, hey, spend 3.5 extra hours this week. This is eligible for overtime pay or something like that. And then submit that, and that will fall on my manager Kevin's plate so that he can approve my time card. Now, the next thing we're going to take a look at is reporting for Timesheets by Tempo. And this is actually a conjunction of both our log time and our plan time within the tool. So this uses both Tempo Timesheets and Planner by Tempo so that we can compare our plan versus our actual spent time. This is our plan versus actual report here within the Tempo tool. And you'll see this is filtered by project, so our Jira projects. Of course, we can filter by a lot of different configuration items here within the reporting tool. So we could grab a Tempo configured team, Tempo configured roles, accounts, account categories, a lot of different Tempo configuration items that we can use to filter through this report, as well as pretty much any configuration item within Jira as well. So epics, specific issues, users within Jira, and then you have Jira query language to leverage at your disposal here. So you could have a pre-configured Jira filter that has very complex time constraints or very complex field constraints that you then filter your plan versus actual time by. And you can, of course, have as many of those filters as you'd like within here. And then what you can do is you can group these by the same configuration items. So we have it grouped by epic within those projects, but we could group this by any of our Jira fields as well. So versions, if you're a product team and you're releasing multiple versions, components, if you store things like which departments are working on the work within components within Jira. So any of those Jira fields, any of those Jira custom fields that you have within your environment that you've created, as well as any of those tempo fields like our specific accounts for our clients or category of accounts, right? So that we can say, hey, these are external billable accounts or internal accounts that we're tracking, and we can separate those two and see the plan versus actual time. And ultimately, the variance of that time, the delta between those two here in the plan versus time report, which you'll be able to see here on the left-hand side is our plan time split up by those epics within our vendor enablement program project within Jira, our total amount of plan time, our total amount of actual time. You can see we're quite a bit off here. We have a 58% variance. So maybe we planned a lot of time here and we didn't actually log it all. We didn't make it to it all. Or maybe our team just hasn't logged the time for this week quite yet, right? It's only midway through Friday, and we should give them some more time to log that final week, which is about half of our time period here that we've configured between the last 2 weeks. So we should probably just give them a little extra time and they'll bring that variance down. And then you can see the epic variance specific to those issues or time logged against specific epics, whereas some of this time is logged to issues that don't have an epic within the project. So a lot of different ways that we can visualize this report utilizing the group by and the filter by features up here at the top. You can, of course, save this report, so you can have multiple different versions of this report saved off. You can share it with external users or users that have visibility permissions within the tool, and then you can print or export a printable version of this report as well. So when it comes to planning time with Tempo, typically this is not going to happen within the individual Jira issue view, right? Your individual contributors are usually going to plan for working on more than one issue and usually plan to work on it for the next couple weeks. So they want to be able to visualize several weeks into the future and plan across those weeks to make it nice and easy and less cumbersome than individually planning each day on each Jira issue that they plan to work on. So within the Tempo view of the tool, we have this planning view over here on the left-hand side that we can visualize as an individual contributor just our plan for the next several weeks, or maybe as a manager or team lead, our entire team's plan for the next several weeks. So what I'm looking at here is my entire vendor partnership team that I configured within Tempo. But of course, I could filter this view by users, roles, even generic resources. So say I know a developer has to work on this, but I'm not sure which specific developer on our team is going to be working on this. Or skill, right? So maybe I need an SQL developer, or maybe I need a technical writer, or maybe I need a project manager to be planning some of this work over the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to plan their plan to plan work here within the Tempo Planner tool. So they make it very simple and easy here. On the left-hand side, we have the users that match this filter. So everyone in our vendor partnership team, we actually have their availability within our time constraints. So we're looking at most of March here, and based off of all of their planned time already in the tool, we can see how many available hours they have left, right? So it looks like my availability is 25 more hours within this time period. I left one of these weeks blank. Maybe I was on PTO or vacation, and I've got some gaps here. You can see these yellow ones mean that I'm not fully at capacity on these days. The green check marks mean I'm right at my availability hours for those days. And then these 10s and red means you're actually planning for more time than you're supposed to be working on those days. So what we can do is we can open up me as an individual and see the specific Jira issues that I have planned for these different days. And what I can do from here to fill out the rest of my plan, say for next week, is I can either drag an issue from our same issue search functionality that we showed when logging time over here on the right-hand side, or I can simply click and drag across multiple days to plan for an entire period. So if I want to fill out the other 4 hours a day for next week, I can click and drag across those 5 days and then search through the issues here to grab that vendor enablement program issue that I plan to work on. Oh, it looks like my other 4 hours are already planned for that issue. So I'm actually going to plan to work on our marketing campaign for those other 4 hours, the other half of the day for all of next week. And I'll type in 4 hours here per day. I can make this repeating just like we did in that Jira issue view. And then I can just hit plan time and that'll fill up the rest of my time here. Now, if my plan changes, I can always click and drag and say, hey, I'm only going to spend the first 3 days working on that. And maybe I want to do some product requirements on those other 2 days. So I'll drag that across here as well. And as you drag it in, you'll see it just fills you up to capacity. If you want to plan over capacity, you can, of course, edit that plan time as well. But it's nice and easy based off of your total amount of working hours to just fill the plan up and then see that total aggregate and, of course, availability based off of that plan for your entire team here. Now, the next view we're going to take a look at here is a similar view, but it's a team-based view where you can essentially see for weeks or months into the future what issues, what epics, what Jira initiatives is my team actually planning on working on, right? So we can see those ones that we just entered into my plan here, and we can see my other team members are mostly working on our large epics within our vendor enablement project within Jira. And from here, we could filter through roles within our team. We can filter through our work based off of the status in its workflow. And we can utilize pretty much any filters just like we have across these views to visualize what our plan is and how much availability that team has based off of the work that they have planned, right? You'll see the total amount of hours they have planned on those issues in the bottom right-hand side. And this team one actually shows you the total full-time engineer effort that it'll take to complete that epic assigned to that team based off of that epic's original estimate. So we can put, say, 400 hours as our estimate to complete an epic, and it'll tell you, hey, you need another 0.2 full-time engineers based off of your plan to fill out that original time estimate on that epic. Now, the final view here I'll show for plan time is going to be an individual plan time report. So earlier we saw planned versus actual time, comparing time logged versus time planned. For log time and plan time, you can have specific reports based off of just one or the other, right? So with Planner by Tempo, you can see a plan time report, and by Timesheets by Tempo, you can see a log time report that looks somewhat like this, depending on your configuration of that report. So just like our plan versus actual report, we can filter by really any of those configuration items across Tempo and Jira. We can group by any of those configuration items across Tempo and Jira. And we can also visualize things like planned capacity within this report, required hours. So, hey, we expect you to be working 240 hours across our selected time period here. This is how much you have planned, and this is the percent of that required capacity that you have planned within the time period as well, right? So we have this grouped by epic and then user underneath of it. So for our vendor relationship strategy epic, I have 28% of my capacity planned on that, whereas I have 20% of my capacity planned on setting up the new Jira project that we're demoing today. And then we can see that rolled up by month over here on the right-hand side. We can, of course, drill into specific weeks, specific days here, or just a total overview so we can see rolled up metrics here. So very easy for us to configure this report in several different ways to make it visual for executives, for stakeholders, for people that are approving our plans for the next couple weeks, months, quarters into the future, right? So very easy for us to start to add some different data to this as well. We can see estimated and remaining time based off of the individual epic and user on that epic based off of our grouped by section up here. And then, of course, just like the other reports, we can export these into multiple different formats. Raw data is very easy to download out of Tempo. So if you have an external tool that you want to aggregate time into from several different platforms, very easy to get the data out of the Tempo tool as well. Now, the final Tempo tool that we want to show today is called Cost Tracker by Tempo. And that, of course, brings in the financials to all of your time, essentially. So this is really good coupled with the other two tools. Individually, it doesn't really do much because a lot of the cost tracking within Cost Tracker is based off of your log time and your plan time. So what you can do within Cost Tracker is you can create what they call a project within Cost Tracker. And that project you could set a budget for, you can assign a team to, and you can essentially have a scope of Jira work attached to that project, right? So our vendor partner program project here within the Cost Tracker is going to have all of the Jira issues within our vendor partner program Jira project or multiple projects that are working for that vendor partner program. Now, in the overview, you'll see some of our historical costs and then also some of our projected costs. So this is split up based off of log time for the historical costs and then plan time for the projected costs. So you get some projected labor costs, some projected expenses based off of your historical expenses and labor costs and based off of that planned time. So, hey, we have, this much planned time against our vendor partner program for the next several weeks. We know it will probably cost somewhere around here as long as we hit that plan, right? And what we saw in the plan versus actual report was the utilization numbers on those plans versus actual time. So we know, hey, this is our average delta. Hey, we're off 8% based off of historical plan versus actual reporting. So we know this projection is probably plus or minus 8% in terms of variance and accuracy within our overview here. As you can see, we have the total budget we set for the project, total costs so far, the projected costs that we're looking at, the revenue that we've created, and this is projected revenue, of course, and the revenue is going to be based off of bill and cost rates for our individual resources. So for the team attached to this Cost Tracker project, we can say, hey, Nick is billed, $200 an hour, and he costs $150 an hour, right? So for every hour, he makes $50 for us in revenue, and that gets aggregated into this report, and you can see that rolled up here and projected along the timeline. And then on the right-hand side, you can see what our profit is and our net profit margin so far. So we have a very high net profit margin here. It looks like we charge quite a lot of money for our resources, but don't pay them that much. A huge profit margin that probably isn't super realistic, but just to demonstrate what that profit margin can show you, we can see our total schedule here, our scope of issues, and then our total costs and costs remaining within that timeline. And then down here, this is what I really want to call out, is when we create Tempo accounts and then categorize them as capital or operational expenses, and then log and plan time against those accounts, this is where that aggregates so that we can see, hey, we've spent $16,500 on capital expenses and $24,800 on operational expenses thus far. And these are hyperlinks, so you could always drill into these and see what exactly those expenses are as well. Now there's several other tabs in here so that we can dig into the scope of issues within our project. This is where we can adjust the scope and resync the scope of our Jira issues. So if we've added issues to those projects, if we've created a new Jira project that's contributing to this work, we can reconfigure what scope we're grabbing to visualize within our cost track project and reporting here. And then you can see it grouped by epic down here in the bottom or issue down here at the bottom. We can change that grouping and create a new group so that we can visualize total cost, total time spent, revenue, billable time spent against specific issues within our scope, whether those are epics, initiatives, individual tasks, or stories. And then, of course, you can see some remaining cost, time, and remaining revenue based off of that planned time that we have within our planned time tool. One step over here, we have the team. So we're seeing essentially the same exact metrics, but split up by users of our team. And then one further over, we have expenses. And this is where we can add individual manual expenses to the project, right? So when we saw that overview and we saw that expense section of it, this is where it's getting that data. And you can have categories of expenses. So we've got $25,000 of travel expenses, $15,000 of hardware, $10,000 of licensing, and then $5,000 of internal. So those might just be operational expenses of us, buying lunch for the team or something like probably several times if it's $5,000. So you can see that breakdown of expenses. You can have these attached to accounts as well. And of course, you can categorize those, edit, remove them, and export all this data to CSV, just like within any of the reporting. Very easy to add new expenses. We just add a description so we can say, took vendor out to lunch or something like that, talking about our new vendor partnership program. Maybe it was a nice fancy lunch for a few people, so we'll say $600 here. And then we don't have a category that really makes sense for that other than internal, but we could create a new category, right? So this may be, vendor relations category, something like that, right? Very easy to create a new category, and then we can attach this to a specific account if we would like to do that and make this a reoccurring expense if we know it's going to happen pretty often, right? We take the vendors out to lunch once a week, once a month. We can plan for that. Within the configuration, you can set budget. You can determine how revenue is tracked. You can auto sync those issues. You can add, remove members and change their roles. And this is where you can also change individual cost rates and bill rates. You have global cost rates that you set across all of your cost tracking projects, but this is where you could say, hey, I'm a little more expensive than those other resources. I could have an initial rate and then change my rate in when we hit a specific date within the project as well. So very easy to adjust those rates over a time period and say, hey, our rates go up, when we hit that fiscal year in the middle of the year. So we're going to update our rate automatically when that time comes. Now, the next view I want to show is one of the two reports that we get out of Cost Tracker as well. We get actual costs and planned costs. So this actual cost report is going to be showing, hey, this is what we've actually spent money on based off of the log time against the issues within our scope in this cost track project, right? So all of our team members that have log time against any issues that we have within our scope are going to aggregate cost based off of their cost rate, their total effort based off of how much time they've logged, total labor costs, and total expenses here on the right-hand side, right? So expenses and labor costs, of course, aggregating into total amount, labor costs based off of their cost rate and time logged, and expenses based off of what we just showed, logging individual manual expenses. We can filter this as well based off of several different things. We can resync and regenerate this report, export it, print it. As you can see, it breaks it down into time period, into individual user. So some really good raw financial data here within the tool. And then we can do the same exact thing for planned time, right? So all of our planned costs is an aggregate of our planned time against our cost rates for those individual users. So you can see our cost rates down here for the individual users. You can see that planned time, and then you can see the aggregate of that total planned amount. So very easy to visualize all that information, all that data, and get some pretty good financials within the tool based off of what we did within Timesheets and what we did planning our next several weeks for our team. So that's really the main Tempo suite of their 3 time-related apps. They of course have other apps within the marketplace, so definitely go over to marketplace.atlassian.com, check out the Tempo suite. They've got things like structure for program and project management. They have a lot of different tools. I really just wanted to highlight those time tracking tools for you today and show how easy it is for individual contributors, for managers to log and plan their time across large periods so that you as a manager, as a product owner or project owner, can visualize and understand how much capacity does my team have? How much capacity for a specific type of resource or role do I have? And then bringing in financials, that financial team can visualize if they're on or off mark in terms of that total budget for that project over a period of time, and looking at a forecast for the future based off of your planned time. So some very, very powerful tools, especially when you use them in conjunction with each other. They also can be trialed for free on your Jira environment. So don't hesitate to go over to that marketplace, hit try for free, upload it to your environment, and play around with it with your own data. Of course, this use case that I've demonstrated doesn't match everybody's use case, but the tool is extremely flexible in what you can use it for. Here at Isos Technology, we're a consulting company, so of course we leverage Tempo every single day. We create accounts for every single client that we work with. And so when you need Tempo configured and you come to us for that help, we'll create a Tempo account to make sure that we're billing the right amount of time to your team, and we have receipts so that we're not overbilling you for work that we didn't do as well. So very, very applicable to a wide range of use cases and a very, very powerful tool. And that is exactly why it is the most, if not the second most, utilized and installed app from that Atlassian marketplace. So check it out today. And if you do need any help with it, remember, go to isostech.com. We do configuration of all these third-party apps as well as things like implementations of the main core Atlassian products, migrations to the cloud environment. We do agile and organizational change management services as well. Managed services if you don't have Jira administrators on your team, or if you do, we can train them up on new tools by facilitating training from Atlassian's university, hands-on training with experts that you can ask questions to. So check us out, isostechnology.com. This has been a lot of fun. Again, Nick Nader, Senior Solution Engineer here for the Isos team. And if you have any questions, definitely don't hesitate to leave them in the comments. I will be checking those out, and we should be able to answer any of those. And of course, we can hop on a call and chat about any of these products. Just go to isostech.com, and you can contact us very easily through the website. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.